morning and welcome to the Marysville Tulalip Chamber of Commerce Business Before Hours. And this month we are doing our legislative update. We're going to have a little bit of Q&A time at the end. So if you have questions along the way, you're welcome to type it into the chat, or at the end you could do the raise your hand feature and we'll call on you. We also like to do the digital business card swap here. So if you could put in the chat your business name and contact info, then that way after the meeting is over, I can send that out to everyone that was here today. So that way you guys can have a couple more contacts at the end of the meeting. So today's topic is our annual update from Representative Carolyn Eslick of the 39th District. Some of you guys might remember that we had Carolyn last year at this time, and we were kind of reminiscing a minute ago about, you know, how she actually came to the office in person where we filmed her 6 feet away from everything, had the tape out and everything 1 year ago. So a little bit different times now. And so we're going to go ahead and jump right into the information of today's meeting. So I want to tell you a little bit about Carolyn. Carolyn Eslick grew up on a farm and as an adult owned a restaurant for 20 years. Carolyn learned the complexities of running a business firsthand. Looking to help others start and grow their businesses, she founded and helped run Grow Washington, a business development and retail incubator. She was Sultan City Council member for 6 years and mayor of Sultan for 9 years before being appointed to the state legislature in 2017 as House Representative for the 39th District. Carolyn sits in the House Committees for Transportation, Capital Budget, and the Children, Youth, and Families Committee. So good morning, Carolyn. How are you doing? Uh-oh.
There we go. Are we on now? We
Yes.
are. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Jessica, for that great introduction. I am doing very well. I am Zooming from my house. Session this year is much different than in the past. They've asked us to be home. Excuse me. So Zooming from my dining room table. Sometimes my husband, who sits just about 8 feet away, I bought him a headset, and so he forgets sometimes that I'm Zooming, and there'll be laughter or he'll start singing, and so those are the things that happen when you're at home Zooming. A lot of times we see cats running across the screen or dogs barking, you know, but it's fun. It makes it human. I adjusted very well to be sitting at my dining room table, looking at my bird feeder and watching all the birds come in. Very relaxing. But what I do miss is the interaction with our people that we would be able to do in the hallways, interacting with the other side of the aisle, negotiating bills. We can't do that now. It's more complicated. With that said, then since it has been this way, we have less bills happening this year, and sometimes that's not a bad thing. Things are moving a little quicker because there are less. So that's kind of our world right now. We still have a few weeks. Our last day is April the 26th, 25th, Sunday. And frankly, looking forward to that day, a little vacation.
Well, that sounds very different from the last time I even visited Olympia. I could not imagine how odd it must be for you guys who work there. So what kind of new legislations are you seeing this year that is going to affect local business that some of our businesses here in Marysville and Tulalip might be interested in?
Well, definitely. I hope that you're all watching the carbon bill. That is House Bill 1091. And that means that it's going to cost us money. It's going to cost us at least 20 cents a gallon if that goes through. They want a reduction of carbon 20% by 2035. You know, California has done it already, and they did it 12 years ago. And frankly, it has shown very little environmental impact. We of course have been fighting it all along on the Republican side. And right now it's in the Senate Ways and Means. March 29th, they'll be voting on it. So if you have a chance, make it a priority, in fact, to contact everyone that's on Senate Ways and Means and tell them, please stop this bill. The other one is the capital gains, which will affect all of you business owners when you sell your business or when you sell your property at retirement age. That will affect you. And that Senate Bill 5096, it is sitting in finance right now. They had a public hearing. It hasn't moved since the middle of March, but there's discussion that it might, because the Senate budget, operating budget, shows a 7% increase in revenue through that. So watch that one too. Please get involved, speak up, tell them that is not good for the community, for the economic world of our Washington state. And frankly, our policy should be directed at COVID relief and one-time funding that the government has provided for us. It shouldn't be increasing funds. It should not be increasing revenue to the state of Washington, because we already have billions of dollars. Our budget is $56 billion. And the revenue forecast that came out a week ago shows that we are post-COVID revenue. So we do not need any more money. There we go.
You mentioned having people reach out if this is something that they're concerned about to the committee members of Ways and Means. So how would they go about doing that? Is that just on the wa.leg.gov?
That's right. Yep. Or they can just easily Google search Washington State Senate Ways and Means Committee. I mean, simple stuff like that. Get there, give them your testimony, be part of the solution. I've seen that work. That the participation of the masses has stopped bills from happening. I think it'll show eggs on the face of if this bill passes, because it's pretty ridiculous when the funds from the federal government have come to our aid. We do not need it. Okay, sorry.
So I'm curious, have you had a chance to sponsor any bills this session to help things out?
So there's been a couple of bills. One is a broadband bill, and a pretty simple bill that has gone through so far. I think it's going to end up on the floor again, and it's got good momentum. It is about disclosure of broadband on your property. When you sell your house, there'll be a line on the disclosure papers. Do you have internet service? Yes or no? Simple. If you do, who is your provider? Simple. What it's done is brought that and elevated that utility to the top so that we all understand how important that is. We have put millions of dollars in broadband this year. Federal government is putting millions of dollars in broadband for our state. We just need to set it up and direct it where it needs to go first. And the bills that are out there now that I did not sponsor but support are targeting the rural areas and the underserved first. And then it'll be for the whole state.
So that'll be like if you look up a house on Zillow and you can see the school district it's in and the schools that it's in, you'll also be able to see whether it has internet service. Huh?
Yeah, and you know, in the beginning, so the governor did a great thing a couple of years ago by hiring Russ Elliott as the broadband director out of the Department of Commerce. I invited him into my office and we had a good chat the very first year. He was only there a couple months. That really emphasized to him how important that I felt it was that we had it. And that was back then before COVID, right? And so he brought with him a fabulous tool that you can go on today, Department of Commerce broadband. And it's a tool that you connect with by click and shows your house on the map and what your strength is for your internet service there. That's how he determines what area needs to be focused on first. Isn't that the coolest thing?
Yeah.
Very cool.
And you have a ton of rural in your district, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anything that you're fighting for this legislative session that hasn't passed yet?
Oh, let's see. Well, the manufacturing bill that Rep. Matt Binky and Rep. Dave Paul have been working on. It will double manufacturing in the next 10 years. So totally support that. That needs to happen. They both they're employed by community colleges. And so they understand the importance of the workforce starting and being trained at the college level to fit the careers that are out there. So it's moving. It's got bipartisan support. I will not be surprised that that doesn't happen this year.
Awesome. What would you say are some of the state's biggest accomplishments this past year?
I think we've done very well with the COVID money. There's never been a squabble on how to spend it and making sure that our businesses get access to it. So I just think that that's the huge part of surviving this whole mess. And I'd like to take a minute and send my condolences to the businesses that did not make it, that will not come alive again. But the ones that are there that are struggling, I'd like to emphasize that there is more money, Department of Commerce grants. The grant period will open on March 29th. So you go to the Department of Commerce and click on that. It's commercialgrants.com. And it's a part of the early action bill. It says there's $240 million for our small businesses. They are going to target the historically underserved and disadvantaged population. So that may be an advantage to you and may not. But I always, when this whole thing started and the grants were coming down, I was reaching out to SBDC and folks in SBA to help our businesses figure out, how do we access this money? Do you get it directly from the agency or do you go to the bank? And you know, there were several pots of money and there were several ways of finding that money. I always emphasize the fact, don't take a loan out unless it was the PPP loan that was going to be forgiven. And that's still risky, because if something didn't work well for you, then you would end up paying it back. But grants are the only way to go at this point for our small businesses, and we need them and need you more than ever. So please take that money and use it and move forward with your business.
Are you thinking that the state's going to be working on more grants as the budget goes on? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I do. Everyone understands the importance of our small business. Everyone down in Olympia and in the legislature.
How do you see the state focusing on the COVID crisis having to do with business?
Well, definitely it's still the grants. You know, I think that we understand that it's very important to help new businesses get started. Arlington has an innovation center that they've been working towards, and so far it got funded. So entrepreneurs will be able to go to that location, similar to my Grow Washington, right? But open to all business. Those are the kinds of things that we support. It's all about jobs. We want more jobs. We've got to put the 200,000 jobs that we lost at the beginning of COVID. We need to get those in place, and unemployment needs to go down. I think that we've done well in making sure that unemployment was, let me just say this. Now, how many of you got letters from Employment Security Department saying that your insurance was going up? Some of them up to 1,000%. My chiropractor, local chiropractor's unemployment rate went up 1,000%. Well, there was an outcry and an outrage, and they reversed that and sent out another letter saying, okay, just kidding, you know, now it's less. Well, it's still an increase. And because there was so much fraud that was going on in the first few weeks of Employment Security Department, and Nigeria stepping in and getting how many millions of dollars, it should not be on the backs of our small businesses. It should not be. Now, so far, all they did by lowering your rate was kick the can down the years. So it's still in there as a budget crisis. But I hope to be able to see some of the COVID money fill that gap so that our businesses are not required to pick it up in the next 10 years. It's a problem.
Are there any, I know you mentioned the Department of Commerce grant. Are there any other resources that you know about right now that can help businesses that they can either research or just look up, have one of their staff members look up?
Well, you know, I would like to call out AWB. I don't know how many of you folks are real familiar with AWB. I see Dom saying, yes, you are. I'm just thrilled to see what they are doing.
Association of Washington
Businesses. Thank you very much. So every Sunday at 7 o'clock, they have a review of what's happened in Olympia for that week. And they emphasize what bills are still surviving and what bills have died. They're just doing outstanding things. So I think they're a huge resource. And of course, you know, I'm just a believer in SBA, Small Business Association, and Small Business Development Centers. Truly, they are there to help for free, and we need to use them. You know, there's one thing that I always taught when I was in business development was surrounding yourself with an advisory team. And I more than ever think that's really important. Your chamber is a great resource. You could, by announcing your business on the chat box and interacting with each other, start talking about your business problems that you're having and try to find solutions within your tribe, so to speak. People have answers within their own being if we just start asking the right questions and supporting each other.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for supporting the SBA. So that's the Small Business Administration. It's actually federally funded, I believe. Yes. And
Yep.
then they are also the ones that help some of our small businesses find funding.
Yep.
And they also are kind of the parent company to SCORE, which some of you guys may have worked with SCORE mentors. They're ex-executives who are retired from specific industries that will work one-on-one with business owners or people who are interested in becoming business owners within that industry. It's a fantastic resource. So thank you for supporting them.
Really is a great program. Yeah.
So I have to ask, how is it doing Zoom session?
I think it's quite successful, actually. No, we've had, I always said from the very beginning, this is going to open the door for a lot of people that live in the rural areas that don't want to drive 2 or 3 hours to Olympia to testify. And I think that's worked. What I have found that is that we are on a limited time schedule, and sometimes our folks that are testifying don't get the chance to testify, and they are pretty upset about that. So all I can say to you folks that are still available and still willing to testify on a bill, make sure that you send your comments also via email so that it at least gets it in the record. They will talk about, even if you can't testify, they will tell us at the end of the meeting how many people were supporting and how many people were not supporting the bill. That's a big deal. To be able to hear there were 150 people in support of this and only 5 of them that were not in support. That's a big deal.
In the hearing that day.
In the hearing, hearing that day, yeah. So I think that's really important to do. Other than what I mentioned before, we just don't get a chance to do the negotiating that we've been able to do in the past. We have a lot more phone calls to each other, right? Phone calls, and texting. We're using a lot of texting. That's good, you know, because sometimes the bills are happening immediately and we have to have a question answered. And so I have a direct line to the mayors of all the cities and in our district so that I can, and fire departments and hospitals, so that we can converse, even if it's just one, are you supporting this bill? No, I'm not, you know, and why? Those kinds of things happen a lot.
Wow. And I have to think too, with the Capitol building being so full of granite, that it's got to affect the Wi-Fi there. So I'm glad that you guys get to work from home, because I could only imagine all of you guys trying to be on computers while you're down in Olympia.
Right. Well, they were really good about offering us hotspots too. And there are several people that live in the rural farmland of Eastern Washington, and they get a hot spot. I ended up getting one during one of our big storms, just as a backup for me. Yeah, there are a handful of people down in Olympia. The leadership of both sides of the house are there, because when we are on the floor, so to speak, ready to vote on bills, we have our Speaker of the House up front and their folks that are their supports team, all wearing masks. And then out in the audience or on the floor, there will be 2 or 3 on each side that are leadership folks that have to be there to be able to negotiate through the system. And that's been working out pretty well. They're getting very lonely though. Yeah. Very lonesome.
Yeah, big room.
Yeah, that. And then they go to their office and they're not allowed to leave once they're in their office. They can't interact from office to office. Okay. It's really sad because it's really strict, huh? I was really glad I wasn't leadership. Let me just say that.
Wow. So a couple people still on the floor, and then Zoom includes them as well as everyone that's at home.
Yep.
And how do you guys do your voting now?
Yep. Well, so if you could see me today, you would see that I've got a monitor to my right and another laptop on my left. So the monitor on my right will have the voting screen up when we're voting, and they'll open up the voting and there'll be a yay or a nay, and we move our little cursor up there to vote yes or no. And then on the side screen, it'll have all the people, all the representatives and how they're voting. And that's how it works. And they close it down and go on to the next bill.
Sophisticated.
It's pretty cool. And then on the left, I have my other computer, and I can look up bills while we're doing this to make sure that I'm talking about the right bill and what did it say and the latest version and all that.
Yeah. Wow. And then we talked a little bit about breakout rooms. Like, how are those getting used for when you're doing caucusing or discussion?
Right. So in the past, where we caucused was on each side of the floor. Democrats on one side and the Republicans on the other. And so now we leave the Zoom meeting, completely leave it when it says it's time to go to caucus. And then we click into Microsoft Teams and we all end up there for the Republican caucus. We can see each other. We have the interaction no different than before, but we just don't have the donuts in the room to eat.
Oh, wow.
Goodness, thank goodness.
It's so fascinating how you guys have pivoted yourself to try to make this work. So I haven't watched the chat a ton to see if there's questions. I'm gonna look through them real quick. I'm gonna open up the screen so that way we can see more people and we can see hands raised. Please.
While you're doing that, could I talk about something else that's really hot right now that we need to?
Absolutely.
And it's called the 988 line. The federal government has mandated all the states to implement a 988 line for suicide. I was a little bit perturbed about having to do this because I thought we had care crisis line. I thought we had enough lines. Well, I reached out to one of the 3 providers in our state who was already a call center and already a care crisis line provider, and asked, tell me what the suicide calls look like. And so she sent me 2018 and 2019, the average for the year were 1,300 calls. In 2020, there was 58,000 calls. That was suicide subject topic. They feel that once this line is in place, there'll be over 200,000 a year. This is a sad day in our life. The suicide rate is huge, and we at the state level understand the importance of this, and we are funding it, and it will, well, let me just say this, we're looking at funding it for a year, but then it's going to be a tax on your cell phone line and on your landline. That's how I see this all coming down. It will be very little amount on each one, but that's how they're thinking about funding it. I think that at least for this time of our life, it's really important that we get this line up and running, not to mention it's mandated by the federal government. Thank you very much.
So now, does that line have therapists or counselors talking, or are
Yes,
people
yeah,
just listening?
ju-
Or?
yeah, no, there is. And as I quizzed the care crisis line folks, I said, how are you going to find enough workforce? And she said, well, we did something a year or so ago already by allowing a 4-year degree to be the employee and not a master's. So that opened it up. But we at the state level understand, and we are putting together some funding to reimburse people that are interested in going into this line of work, and we would refund their money for their college to do that. We haven't put a lot into it yet, but I think that it'll end up with a good substantial amount to entice people to go into this field.
Wow, that is fantastic. And then what about follow-up services? Is there any talk yet about that?
Yeah, they're definitely, we're funding beds, more beds. We're building, and I say this is all in the budget now, but there's still a long process before it's completed because it has to go, we have to marry it to the Senate budget. And then of course, then we have to, the governor has to sign off on it. But we are definitely in the budget to add another hospital at Western, a new one. And including, there's in Snohomish County, there hopefully will be the 16-bed mental health hospital that's coming in. They're looking for a site. And then Cedar-Woolley, the northern state, is moving, and we helped to start that process last year funding-wise, and hopefully we can fund it some more to get that bed moved and up and running in Cedar-Woolley. So we understand the importance of beds, especially for the youth. We absolutely, the kids between the ages of 12 and 18, there's a huge need for them to have beds that are long-term, not a 7-dayer like that's what's being provided now at Smoky Point. They're only allowed 7 days there. Not enough when these kids are in crisis. So.
Wow. We do have a question from Mark asking, what were the suicide call numbers again? What do you think is driving the increase?
Okay, the numbers are, they were 1,300 a year for 18 and 19. For 20, it was 58,000. And then the prediction is 214,000 actually, to be exact. And it's absolutely the fact that the kids have been home Zooming. Absolutely, that is the number one reason. They absolutely have to have the social part of life, and they were not getting it. And then let's talk about the farmers. My representative, Tom Dent in Eastern Washington, talks about the farmers have the highest rate of suicide in the state for their line of work. And he just lost another friend a week ago. Who would ever guess, right? Who would ever guess that would be the issue with farmers? I come from a farming family, and I certainly, if there was going to be a time, my father would have had that opportunity before I was born. And they had a very successful flower business raising lilies. And when they harvested the bulbs, they were sent in actual truckloads, train carloads back east to be packaged. And overnight, they lost everything, because the aluminum plant was reopened after the war, and the fumes, because there was no restrictions there, the fumes burnt the bulbs in the ground. They lost everything. He had to start a new career. He had 7 children at the time, and my mother had to go find a job. So I get that, it can happen to any actual business, right? Any actual business. Our businesses some of our folks could have had that same problem in the restaurant and the hospitality that's been so hard hit. It's been a pretty devastating year for a lot of people.
Definitely agree. We've got
Is everybody depressed now?
Yeah. I mean, it's reality. We got to talk about it, right? Yep. So got a comment from Janelle that she's heard that there's a rise in domestic violence as well due to COVID. Is that something?
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. It is. I don't know those numbers. I didn't ask those numbers, but I certainly could if you're looking for those numbers. Yeah.
What about the, Michael asked, what about the veterans of our state and the rate of their suicide? Are we seeing?
I don't know that either. That's another good question. Again, I could reach out to my source and get those. Would you like to know that? I'm gonna take some here.
I think so. I think we can
Yeah.
follow up with people if, I think it's good information to know.
Yeah.
Maybe a place, link or something to follow up if they want to research a little bit more on the different categories as well. Yeah.
I'll get that to you, Jessica, and then you can send it out. Right.
Dom wrote, anything that will address mental health, especially suicide prevention, should be supported. For example, SNOCO, as per the Volunteers of America and Everett calls were up 65% as of July 2020.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
They are my source, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you know, another important bill that in my opinion, is very important. It's about prevention, and family resource centers have been a part of my life since 1992, to be exact. And when I went down to Olympia, I started talking to folks about family resource centers, and most of my colleagues had never heard what they were and not heard those words. So we, Volunteers of America and I, started working on a definition so we could get it in statute. They then Children's Home Society reached out to me and said, we're working on the same, along with you on the same project, and would like to work together. So we did come up with a definition, and that's House Bill 1237. It has gotten out of the House and in the Senate, and hopefully comes to the governors. It's unanimous, bipartisan results, and everybody understands it now. Everybody understands what a family resource center is, the definitions in statute. We found out that there are 60 already that call themselves that in the state of Washington. We will be number 32 in the states of the United States that have identified in statute what they are. And in fact, we found out that they have been around since 1870, and they were called settlement houses. What they are is a one-door entry into human services and all your needs, including mental health. So that's a huge bill for me. So if I can get that in place this year and take care of all the transportation needs, then I will have done my job this year.
You know, I love how optimistic you are.
We have to be. We have to be. Yeah.
So Mark writes, House Republicans introduced a package of bills to fix the state drug possession ruling. Do you think that any of these bills, or do you think any of these bills have a chance to succeed this session?
Boy, is that Mark James that brought that to me?
It is.
Wish it was you here, Mark James. That was a real blow to all of us when that happened with the Supreme Court, a huge blow. And kudos to Marysville for doing what they did and reversing that. Kudos, kudos. The big question is, should all the cities follow suit? And I will tell you that I heard from AWC again that they're suggesting that the other cities wait and see to see what happens with some of these bills. You know, early on, to answer your question, Mark, I don't know. You know, things just move around so fast around here. But I will tell you that early in the session in January, Representative Lauren Davis reached out to me. Now, she is the founder of the bill Ricky's Law, which allows you to involuntarily commit somebody to drug and alcohol treatment. Can be a friend even. Well, we have found that number one, that we can write all the bills in the world and pass all the bills, new laws, but unless people know about it, they're not working. And that's what's happened with Ricky's Law. But this new law that she reached out to me, this new bill, was to intercept the people at the ground level to get them into treatment. And I said, well, that sounds like the perfect thing. As soon as they are picked up for drug possession, we give them the option. You can either go to treatment or you can go to jail. Perfect idea. Well, then as the more we talked about the issue and the bill, we figured it out that she was already making it legal. And even though she said she wasn't, because that was not her intent, to make the law, to make it legal to be possession of drugs. I connected her with a good friend, Sarah Davenport Smith, at the Family Policy Center, and they have become very close and good friends now. And now Lauren understands what was happening. She does not agree with that. So we might have some movement. This is kind of a long way around, Mark, that we might have some movement on reversing. But what does that look like? Because the Supreme Court already said it's not legal. How do we maneuver that so that we still capture these people? And it still has some repercussions for your possession of heroin. One of the bills, of course, is underage, to make sure that they still get the treatment. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. Boy, all these things that we're talking about are such complicated problems, and the solutions are much more complicated.
That's specifically why we appreciate you, because you're willing to go through all 150 pages of the bill and figure out if this is actually good for us or not. So yeah. It looks like we got another question from Michael. Do they think the Fed will push back the tax day due to overwhelming demand of folks needing to help with their taxes for 2020 with all the types of questions? Many areas that do not get access into having their taxes done do not have the money to pay someone.
So they already did by 1 month. I don't know if Michael knew that. It's May 15th now. Okay. Is that enough? No, I don't think it is. I think we should be pushing it out 4 months. Contact your congresswoman and suggest that if you too think it should be longer, because I do. 4 months. I agree. 4 months. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Any other questions? This has been super informative. Anything that you wanted to touch on, Carolyn, that we haven't yet?
Well, I was just looking through my notes. Well, we did that. I will tell you that we're doing really good things in childcare. We haven't even touched that yet.
Yeah.
I belong to Children's Mental Health Committee and Children's Youth and Family. That's what we're called now. Last year it was called Human Services, but we have actually the Republicans are putting together our thoughts on what the reform needs to look like in childcare. We all agree, though, that we need to increase the Medicaid reimbursement rate so that the providers get their fair share of what they need to keep moving forward. There are grants provided for them to beef up and hire more people. Anyway, watch for that package from the Republican side that increases childcare and entices more people to go into it again, because we lost a lot during the COVID. Boys and Girls Club picked up a lot of that lacking area during the beginning stages of COVID. They stayed open and they took kids. In fact, I promoted a resolution to congratulate them for all their hard work, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Washington, because they just hung in there for everybody. They were amazing. So, and kudos to all the child care providers that are still in business, because it's been a tough situation for them.
Thank you for recognizing that. That's actually something we've heard a lot from our businesses, is they're having a problem getting their staff back because their staff is either working from home to help their child through school, or their child is too young to go to school, so they can't come into work. So it's definitely affecting our workforce.
Yeah,
so I really appreciate that.
Yep, we know that.
Looks like we got a question from Kathleen. Can't you file an extension request with the IRS to push your filing date forward with no?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. Of course you can.
Awesome.
Yeah, an easy thing. In fact, for several years, that's what I did, because I was waiting for different things happening, and I, they doesn't change what you owe, and in fact, I think they give you a penalty or something for if you owe, but sometimes you don't have a choice. So that's a good point.
Question from Mark, is there legislation in the works to limit the governor's powers in an emergency?
Yes, we've been trying and trying. There have been several bills, but we got another one coming. We get real pushback on that, you know, but we'll keep trying. Yes.
Okay.
We should have been in session 2 weeks after the COVID happened. We all agreed that the governor did the right thing by shutting everything down. But after 2 weeks, we should have called back into session so that we could have had a say on how to the big plan, right? And frankly, you know, this everybody's in the third phase now, and I believe that happened because there's such an outcry. We had all kinds of emails and letters, and we would push them onto the governor's office to tell him, and it happened. So eventually, he does listen.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the numbers of messages you've been getting. We got a question from Camille. You mentioned your transportation projects. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on the likelihood of getting some of them funded this year.
It's looking really good. Just saying. This is a year that we will never see again. The money that has come into the state, well, you know, we get 4.5 billion. And there are more, this federal government is talking about a bigger package for the states to handle transportation, and they're going to earmark it, I think, for maintenance and preservation. I'm on the transportation committee, and we just heard the bill yesterday and we passed it almost unanimously. There were 4 that were against it because there were some issues that they felt needed to be worked on, which is true, but we didn't see the projects yet. They only identified in the bigger picture. They, as in the Chair Fye, who is our chair for transportation. I think that we're going to see important projects funded. This, if you remember, in 2015, there was Connecting Washington package that was passed, and we saw many projects move forward because of that 5 cents gas tax, but a lot of them came to halt during the COVID. And when we first started the session in January, we went through line item by line item and decided what wasn't going to go through and what was going to go through. Since then, since we've had the federal money, Connecting Washington projects will be moving forward as long as the Senate agrees, right? Because again, we have to marry those. So does that answer the question? It looks good. It just looks good this year.
So you mentioned that it's looking really good for maintenance, right? What about new projects? Because I know Marysville has a couple of those coming.
We won't know that till next week.
Okay.
Let me just say that. Yeah. You know, it's one-time projects are important. That's how the federal government is asking us to use the money. That's a big deal. You know, and a few years ago, we lost a case against the tribes about culverts and fish-bearing streams. It is it's a huge number that we have to replace. We've been working on it. It's cost us $700 million a year to keep the projects moving forward, to get them all accomplished. We funded that this year with half federal money and half state money. That was a good thing. We really felt that it should be all federal money because we have other areas and other projects we want to use our money. So we'll see. That could come out in the wash with the Senate budget. We'll see how that all ends up, but definitely we move forward. We have to for the fish-bearing culverts, and coordinating with the cities and the counties to make sure they're doing the same. And when we have a project at the state level, we make sure that the county and the cities are doing upstream, so to speak, right? So hopefully that all works out.
Yes. Got a question from Dom following up. Looks like, wouldn't limiting the governor's emergency powers require a constitutional amendment?
Say that again.
Wouldn't limiting the governor's emergency powers?
No, it doesn't. It's a legislature vote.
Okay.
And we don't have the votes yet to change that.
Okay.
Hopefully in a couple of weeks we can pressure them. That's something you all can help with too. Send the letters, send the emails, you know, stop this. We absolutely need, when there's an emergency, we need your representatives to have a say. Do you agree?
Is it helpful for us to send letters to you, even though we
Well,
know?
absolutely. Well, when you send it to me, you just need to send it to everybody, and then I know it's coming. I know it's there, right? Yeah,
And by everybody, you mean all three of the legislatures for?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
But also, but not only me, but all the representatives and all the senators.
Oh, not just from your own district.
Mm-mm.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do they all count our messages, even if we're not within their district?
I can't tell you because I'm not in their office, but I know we do.
Okay.
Brenda first of all, with the new public disclosure for the state level, we have to keep and archive all of our emails that have anything to do with our session. And so we archive them in files. And so she can tell me when it's time to testify on a bill, how many folks that have sent me con and how many sent me pros on a bill. So I think that's important, that those numbers again are important to get our voice heard.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Question from Janelle: with the rise in gas prices, will there be an increase in the federal reimbursement rate?
I don't know that answer. I don't know that answer, but I certainly can get that answer for you.
Any other questions for Carolyn? Man, I've learned a ton this morning.
Good.
Well, anything to wrap up that before we do our final goodbyes that you want to touch on at all?
If you have not signed up for my newsletter, please go onto my state website and do that. Every 2 weeks, we send out a newsletter to the chambers. In fact, Jessica, you probably send them out once you get ours, right? Is that true?
I do. I take chunks of it and put it in our legislative newsletter.
Okay, so if you want the whole thing, then sign up directly on my website. There's something that's been talked about a lot is the voting and our system in Washington State. You've probably heard that Georgia just passed a new voting reform, and there's people up in arms about it. Now, the question that you may or may not believe that there was fraud in our voting system. When all of this was coming down, I reached out to our Secretary of State and asked, well, first of all, they were talking about a specific program that they were using in other states, and they felt that there was fraud in that program. Well, she convinced me, because she knows, and I trust her, that there was only one county using that particular program, which made my mind at ease. There's always going to be some fraud. Should we change what we're doing? I think we need a better system on making sure the people that are voting are the real people that are voting. I think that's important. But I think that we've done pretty good overall in the state of Washington. So get other opinions, please let me know that.
Good point.
I think
thank you to Mark for posting Carolyn's link there to her website.
Good job, Mark.
Well, so I'm going to do a little bit of wrap up here. Last chance to add your name to the chat, your business name and your contact info for the digital business card swap. Remember to post any events for your business on the Chamber's community calendar, right on the homepage there, no cost, and it's for the whole city. Thank you to all of you guys for coming today. Thank you to Carolyn for all your fantastic information. And the digital business card swap will be in your inbox later today. I do want to say April BBH is going to be in person at the Tulalip Resort Ballrooms. Yep, all the COVID protocols will be followed and pre-registration will be required. The topic's going to be business development with Andrew Ballard, and you'll receive a link to register in our upcoming newsletter. So hope to see you guys there. And one quick announcement, I did want to say my final goodbyes. I have super enjoyed working with everyone at the Marysville Tulalip Chamber. I have accepted a role at the Anacortes Chamber starting the middle of April. So I'm going to stay in the chamber world, but unfortunately I won't be able to stay here. And it's definitely bittersweet. I have so many great friendships built over the years that it's pretty sad for me, but thank you. I just wanted to give you guys a quick note, and then thank you all for coming and have a great weekend.